Recently, I went painting in beautiful Santa Cruz, California, and I was painting right along the coast with the waves rolling in, rocky cliffs in the distance, and it's just one of those scenes that begs to be painted. But unfortunately, the painting didn't go exactly according to plan. There were a few mishaps, some frustration, and honestly, I ended up with a painting that I'm not totally happy with. Still, I learned a lot from the process, and I think those imperfect days are also worth sharing. So here we go. And just as a quick note, if you like these painting videos, then be sure to check out my Patreon. I share all of these videos early and ad-free on my Patreon, and you get access to exclusive behind-the-scenes content and real-time painting videos. So if you like this video, be sure to check it out. So I started the morning ready to paint, and I went to a nice spot along the cliffs where I could see both the coastline and the ocean. And I was ready to go, and I opened my bag, and then I realized that my jar of solvent, the lid hadn't been properly squeezed on, so it had actually spilled inside my bag. So not only were all my painting supplies covered in solvent, but I didn't have any solvent to paint with. Now, in the studio, I don't usually use solvent to clean my brushes. Instead, I use maybe 5 or 6 brushes so that I have one brush kind of for each color family, and then I just wipe them off with a paper towel. But when I'm plein air painting, I only bring one brush of each size I want to use, so I can't do that. So I use the solvent to clean my brushes, and so not having it was a big frustration for me. But I thought, well, I'm here, the view is beautiful, so I may as well give it a try. What drew me to this view was seeing how the waves were breaking along the shore and that contrast between the waves, the blue of the water, the white of the waves, and the darker, sort of rocky coastline. And I liked to see how the watercolor sort of changed as the ocean went off into the distance. There was kind of a transparent purplish water closer to the beach where we were seeing the color of the sand from beneath the water. Then further back, it became a more greenish aqua tone in the middle ground. And then far off in the distance, we could see these beautiful ultramarines and baby blues. And my main goal with this painting was to try to speak to that color shift, and then also to create a composition by using the white highlights of the waves against the darker blues and the rocks of the coastline. However, painting water, especially moving water, is really tricky. You can't freeze the waves in place. Instead, what I do is I watch them for a long time, and I try to look at certain patterns that I'm seeing in the waves. Then I pick a moment that feels right, and I take sort of a mental snapshot or several snapshots of different waves, and then I put those together for my composition, and that sort of becomes my reference. And that's one of the reasons why I love painting water. You're not just painting one instant, but instead you're painting a collection of many moments layered together. As I painted in the water, I started with slightly darker tones for the colors that I was observing. In the foreground, I have some darker, kind of grayish purple colors. In the middle ground, I have a slightly greener shift in color, moving a little bit closer towards blue. And then towards the background, I have more deep blues, ultramarines, and even some lighter, almost baby blue tones. Then, as I was happy with that overall color shift that I was seeing, then I started layering on some of the lighter colors. So bringing in some of these lighter tones on top of the darker tones that I'd put in. And I think of this as sort of creating a mosaic of colors. So when I'm putting in the colors, I'm not just putting in one block of that grayish purple, a block of the more greenish tones, and then a block of the ultramarine. But each section is sort of mixing with each other. So you still have bits of the darker blues in the foreground. You have bits of the greener tones in the foreground and background. And all the colors kind of mix and mingle together. And I think that's one of the things that is so interesting and evocative and beautiful about water. And then as I layer on those lighter colors on the water, I'm bringing in a lot more lighter blues. And it's what I'm seeing with my eyes, but I also think that it's the result of the blue sky reflecting onto the surface of the water. So we both have the colors that are more hinting at the transparent depth of the water, but we also have the colors of the sky reflecting onto the surface. And that, I think, is what gives us that sense of transparency with the water and hints at its really unique nature. However, with this painting, I really was struggling with two things. First, I struggled with the composition. I wanted to have the coastline be a major part of the composition, and then also have the reflected sort of white foam of the waves create some visual points of interest. But I think the way that I arranged the composition, something just wasn't quite working out the way I wanted to. I felt like it just wasn't coming together in a way that was compelling and satisfying. It's not the worst composition that I've done, but I felt like the overall design, for me, it left something to be desired. And that's often what happens when I'm painting waves because they're moving, because they're tricky. It's harder to just look at something and remember what composition really drew you in the first place, because what you're looking at is always changing. The other thing with this piece that I found myself struggling a lot with was the mark making. I went back and forth between using the brush and using the palette knife, trying to get a mix of some softer strokes, some more controlled strokes, and some interesting texture to hint at the energy and the feeling of the beach. But I felt like ultimately my marks lacked a sense of confidence, and I found myself oftentimes going back over marks, trying to fix them, trying to improve them. And ultimately, I think it made the painting look, rather than looking more polished, it ended up looking just really messy as I continued to go over marks that I'd already put down. Usually in paintings, I like to feel really decisive with my mark making, and I like to have clarity in my thinking about what I want to say and what I want to put down. But some days I'm just feeling kind of off and it doesn't work, and I do feel like I lose that clarity in my mark making, and I think that this was just one of those days. But that being said, I think this painting works really well as a color study. I'm so happy with all of the colors that I was able to identify in the water and how I was able to capture some of the gradual, subtle transitions that I was seeing in the waves. And I think it's important to reflect on the things that are going well in a painting, even if overall you're not happy with how this turns out. Especially as we're learning and we're probably making a lot of paintings that we're not really happy with, it's focusing on the things that are working, focusing on the small wins, the things that we did well. That's going to help us stay excited and motivated and hopeful for the next painting. Because with each painting, we are building skills, knowledge, and experience that will help us grow as painters. So yeah, the painting didn't turn out the way I hoped, but that's okay. Sometimes painting is less about making a masterpiece and more about practicing observation, building our skills, and just being open to learn. Even though the composition wasn't strong and my mark making felt off, I still learned so much about how light and water interact. And I also just got to sit in this beautiful place and really observe the natural world. And to me, that's always worth it. Thanks for joining me on this not so perfect painting session. If you've ever had a painting day where it doesn't go quite right, don't worry, you're not alone. These kinds of days happen to all of us. Let me know in the comments if you've had plein air struggles of your own. I'd love to hear how you deal with them or the lessons that you take away. And if you're enjoying these painting process videos, the successes and the struggles, and you want to see more, be sure to check out my Patreon, where I show exclusive behind-the-scenes process videos and full-length, real-time painting videos. So I hope you check it out, and I'll see you there. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.